Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowles. I've got Joe Mead with me tonight, and we're starting off our State of the Program series. Joe and I are going to go over some of the Big Ten football teams, how they did this year, grade them, and what sort of the outlook looks like for next year. We'll recap it. We're probably going to do these for at least the Big Ten bowl eligible teams, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But Joe, we're starting off with Washington because they were the first bowl really of this season. They played Boise State yesterday at the time of recording, and they won 38-10. So Joe, it's a 8-4 or 9-4 season for Washington. They go 5-4 in the Big Ten. And before we get into the finer details, what were your thoughts on overall this season for Jedd Fisch and the Washington Huskies?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely an improvement from the season they had last year. I believe they finished 6-7 in 2024. And to be honest with you, this is the first time it felt like it was somewhat of direction. I think last year, due to the nature of it, was kind of plug and play with Will Rogers. He commits to play for Kalen DeBoer, heads up with Jedd Fisch, kind of has to learn that offense a little, and Jedd Fisch has to adjust some things on the fly. I think this year they were more of a consistent product in terms of what we'd expect from them. I do think their play was anything but consistent, sadly, and that of course showed up uh, in the games against elite teams. I think this was a good football team. I think they were solid, and I think last year, in comparison to the rest of the Big Ten, they were probably on that lower middle class, barely making a bowl game. I think this year they were toward like that sixth, seventh, like sixth through eighth range in the conference. I didn't want to do the stupid millennial trend
Yeah,
there,
almost got that.
but yeah, but I think some of their latter performances, especially the ones against, Wisconsin, like from Michigan, Wisconsin, and Oregon, kind of put them in that eighth best team in the conference, which I think is an improvement from last year. But when you hire Ryan Walters, a really good DC who's had experience in the Big Ten, when you have Devon Williams, and you saw what he did in a lot of those games. I know Denzel Boston, Jonah Coleman were in and out. I feel like if I were to grade the season overall, I'd probably have to give it like a B, B minus, like something was still missing.
Yeah, they took a step from last year, and that's for sure. But when the lights were the brightest, they did not come through. Right? Their offensive numbers, like average wise, probably come out pretty solid. But in terms of when they played their the best opponents, they scored 6 points against Ohio State, seven against Michigan, and not even really calling Wisconsin they were a solid defense, not elite. 10 points there, and then 14 against Oregon. Like they they probably needed a little bit more from their offense in those moments, but they showed signs in other games. 70 against UC Davis, almost 60 against Washington State, 38 against Rutgers, 42 against Illinois, 49 against Purdue, 48 against UCLA. Like they really played they did the opposite of playing down to their opponent, right? When they were the better team, they showed it, and when they were the worst team, they were not able to level the playing field. Um, but their skill players, all had pretty good individual seasons. Their defense, I would say, was pretty solid. They did not give up more than 26 points once. Um, but it's probably a season of what ifs for them, right? I mean, 8-4, you're not thinking, oh, you just missed the playoff, but there was a path at least early on there. But in those games, they showed they were like significantly worse than the ranked teams in this conference.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think when you look back at that Ohio State and Michigan games, they were in that game for three-quarters of those games. It was just the costly mistakes. In the Ohio State game, it's not converting in the red zone. It's coming away with 0 points. And I'm not faulting Jedd Fisch, an offensive coach, with the success up to that point they've had uh, for going for it. In the Michigan game, I think it was a little ridiculous. I thought they were gashing Michigan on the ground at times. It was a 7-7 stalemate, and I think they were a little too aggressive twice. And Damon Williams was clearly not having his best day. He wasn't connecting with his receivers. He only connected up to that point on two deep balls. And he throws a pick to Cole Sullivan, and then another the ensuing drive to tie the game to Jimmy Rolder. To be honest with you, Sean, I think those are two games. If they don't make those fatal mistakes, let's say they don't make him in both of them, they might win one of those games. Probably not the Ohio State one. I'm more indicating the Michigan one. I think the black eye on the season is going to be the Wisconsin game, Sean. I think when, you know, there's no real threat of Wisconsin doing anything on offense. I think they had less than 80 yards passing, and your defense only gives up 13 points, albeit to a horrible offense. As an offensive coach, that's a huge indictment on you and your performance that weekend. Uh, I think if you get to 9 wins and then the 10th win, you wouldn't have played Boise State, but you would have played someone else. I think if they got to 10-3, I would have given this season an A minus.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
when you have a black eye like that, a black eye on the season like that, it's really, really hard to stomach.
yeah, like Wisconsin was not a very good team this year, and this was a game that they had like no, they should not have lost it. It's not like they just got outplayed by a home team on the day, and you say, all right, good for them. They like Wisconsin played really solid defense here, but Washington should have won this game and they didn't. And they ended up bouncing back with a couple of nice wins to show that they're above the bottom tier in this league, Joe. But when it came time to show that they belonged up in the top of the middle of the pack, that never really came, other than the Illinois game. But um, I was, while you were talking there, I was scrolling through. I was pulling up their 2026 schedule. And Joe, let's go over quickly here before we get into the real like state of the program. They It's a tough one. They start off the season with Washington State, Utah State, and Eastern Washington, and we don't have the order of the Big Ten games, but we have them. They will be. Let me switch it over here. They're playing Nebraska, Michigan State, Oregon, Purdue, and USC on the road. Three potentially really tough games there, and then they host Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, and Penn State. So they don't have Michigan or Ohio State on here, Joe, but for a schedule without those two teams, it doesn't get much harder than this. They're going to have to
It doesn't get
elevate their game to stay at the same record next year.
no, it does not get much harder. I often praised Washington and their fan base through the Kalen DeBoer and Jed Fish eras. They were undefeated at home up till that Ohio State game and then that Oregon game. I think next year an early goal could be to maybe get that streak going again. I think they have 7 home games. I know the Indiana one's the one everyone's going to circle, and I know Indiana won at Oregon last year, but I think it's a fair goal to ask. I think it's lofty, but I think it's more than reasonable based on past performance. The clear ones that stand out, the at Oregon and at USC, those are 3 matchup games right there between Oregon, USC, and then Indiana. Those are the games they didn't win this year, and frankly, they didn't come down to the wire. Maybe the Oregon one, if you want to consider that's fair, but in reality, they were outclassed in all 3 of those games. So, would like to see better performances and a win in one of those. It's going to be tough, I know, without Denzel Boston. Likely no Jonah Coleman again either. So, obviously the portal, we're shooting this in December. I really don't know what else all happens here. But assuming Demond Williams comes back, he made a lot of steps this year. I think his first year starting was a very good year statistically. I know situationally he made some mistakes, but year 3 of him and year 2 as a starter, I'm expecting an even bigger stride. I still considered him one of the better QBs in this conference. So I think if you add proper pieces in the portal, if you keep that core intact, I can't see how they can't put another step forward. It's just how big a step that is.
Yeah, I think consistency is probably what he's going to have to improve on a little bit. And of course, Joe, I think it'd be, malpractice not to mention. But all this sort of goes out the door if Jed Fish is not the coach at Washington next year. He is at this point. Um, there's a chance that he is not the coach at Washington next year because he is going to be your coach next year. Michigan has an opening. It is unclear who is going to take that job, Joe, but there's at least a portion of a percentage that Jed Fish is going to be Michigan's head coach next year. So if that happens, throw away this whole video and we'll probably make another one. But with that hanging over Washington and it probably being resolved before like the real transfer portal heats up, it's probably going to be a couple weeks before we really know what the state of the program is for Washington.
Yeah, I think as of now, I mean, if Fish doesn't end up taking that job and stays, and yeah, the DC Ryan Walters stay. I don't think you throw this video out at all. And frankly,
Yeah,
even
well,
if he
yeah,
leaves, I think the grading portion of this video is still relevant
yes,
up
yeah.
to the schedule part. But yeah, Sean, I think he is floated heavily. I don't really pay attention to Kalsha. I know he's leading there, but it's I don't know, Sean. I feel like this is a guy who's moved so many times that Washington is a premier job. I know everyone's going to scream that Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama. Washington's going to be a job similar to Michigan that's going to attract a lot of names and some you don't even expect. So I really wouldn't worry too much as a Washington fan about, getting PTSD from another coach leaving and whatnot. I mean, this was a job that attracted Chris Peterson, a guy who plenty of big suitors tried to poach from Boise State back in the day. So would not worry too much about it. But until we get further confirmation, Shaw, we're shooting this on a Sunday night. Um, I probably don't want to say anything too definitive.
And I think it does help them that they are completely done with everything now. So if they were to lose him, they could like eat like they're already in next season, whether he's their coach
Mhm.
or not. Um, I know with bowl game and players like that could get a little messy. Not the case here. If they do lose him, they should be able to get somebody else in and moving pretty quickly. But ultimately, that's a huge question mark, even as we head towards the end of the year here. But a number of tough. They have 4 home games, 5 away games, um, and they're pretty tough. And then at least by our measure, 3 pretty solid teams going in there to play next year. So um, that's going to be it for our Iowa, or not Iowa, that's going to be up soon. Our state of the program video for Jedd Fisch and Washington. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.